Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Future is in Evidence dialogue series. These talks with key experts will explore how technology, digitization, and innovation are charting new territory for the monitoring, evaluation, and learning practice. Follow us on Twitter at GEI_Global Eval, and we're also on LinkedIn at Global Evaluation Initiative, and visit our webpage. Tell us what you think and enjoy the video.
Hello, friends. I'm Fabio Vitoruga from the Launchpad team, and welcome to the speaker series. Today, I'm joined by Siobhan Green, who leads IMC's digital governance and transformation team. Siobhan is an entrepreneur and is going to guide us into the world of data science, and we'll explore how this is revolutionizing the field of M&E and what opportunities and challenges are ahead of us. Hi, Siobhan. It's great to have you with us today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I really am looking forward to this chat.
So let's get straight into this fascinating topic, and let's start with the data itself. What are some of the non-traditional data sources and analytical approaches that will impact the M&E field from your perspective?
Thank you so much for this question. What we're seeing is that there's so much data right now out in the field that's already being collected by different people, the private sector, by governments, by other NGOs and evaluators. There's a lot of open data, for example, from the World Bank, tremendously great data sets there, as well as the demographic health household surveys that you can get access to. So there's really no reason not to use that data as some of your baseline foundational data. There's also a lot of maps out there. OpenStreetMap has a great set of maps for most of the countries we work in, as well as a lot of private sector data that you might have to pay for or see if you can get access to. For example, if you wanted to look at road transportation, you can talk to some of the trucking companies because they oftentimes track how their trucks are going along roads. And that's one way to actually measure perhaps the performance of a roads project to sort of see before and after how the private sector is able to show their data. Now, there's some complexities there. Open data is easy to access in that it's intended to be pulled down and accessed without any kind of licensing requirements. Government data can be harder, but at the same time, sometimes you can really build relationships to get access to data for these non-traditional, non-typical ways of doing evaluations.
This is great. Thank you so much, Siobhan. So can we talk a little bit more about what are some of the possible uses of this data for M&E purposes?
Oh, great question. So I'll give you an example, actually, one that we did. We were looking at nutrition and determining what kinds of interventions were effective and are they appropriate for the specific needs. So in one particular case, we built a digital tool that looked at vitamin A deficiency across different households and different communities. We then layered that data with demographics around different issues around, say, for example, measles epidemics, but then we also compared that with market prices of vitamin A-rich foods. And so from some of that, we could make some determinations of, are those vitamin A-rich foods even available in the community? Are they available but not affordable? Or are they plentifully available and just not being eaten in places where there was vitamin A deficiency? So again, layering this data, especially using a GIS framework, can oftentimes give you a lot more depth to understand what the various factors are when you're doing your evaluations, especially when you're trying to look at impact that may have variables beyond what the actual implementation, the program that you're assessing are.
That's absolutely fascinating, and thank you for your insights. Now, as we know, not everything that shines is gold. So tell us a little bit about some of the challenges and things to consider when thinking about using these new data sources and approaches.
Absolutely. So first and foremost, we need to understand that most of the data is coming from a digitalization of different industries, especially when you look at non-traditional sources. And we also understand that not every industry has digitized its data. We know that there's gaps, especially when you're talking about rural populations or traditionally marginalized populations. For example, if you're trying to use data from cell phones to track populations or other types of usage, you're automatically not going to have those folks who don't have cell phones. You might get, for example, double counting of folks who have two cell phones, and that tends to fall along gender lines as well as income and education lines. So those are the factors we have to take into account when we're looking at how to use this data. Who's not being represented? Are we overrepresenting some folks? Another challenge is we have to think about data privacy and security. Again, going back to the example of the cell phone usage, a lot of the countries where we're working don't have particularly mature data security regulations. The regulations might even be there, but the actual enforcement might not. So we have to be thoughtful about when we're working with a third party, what kind of data we're asking them to collect on our behalf, as well as what data they're going to share with us. This could be highly sensitive data that might be misused for other purposes. For example, data on key population behaviors in a lot of countries, key populations being those at high risk of HIV, including men who have sex with men, female sex workers, transgender individuals, and those who inject intravenously. That information is obviously very attractive to law enforcement. And I personally have been told about at least 3 different circumstances where that data has been demanded by law enforcement in different countries so that they could arrest the individuals being targeted. So again, we need to be very thoughtful about how this data could potentially be misused. And we need to make sure that we have the systems in place to protect that data and ensure that we're not harming potential unintentionally. And the final piece is that they call data the new oil. So the idea that data is going to be available to you for free is becoming less and less true, especially if you're working with the private sector. You may need to pay for some of this data, or you may need to have some sort of quid pro quo relationship where you clean the data on behalf of a private sector partner. This is actually also an opportunity for entrepreneurs, where if you can have your own data sets that are cleaned and validated, that have those security and privacy considerations, as well as understand the context, that's a great area for you to offer as a service to the international development community.
This is absolutely fascinating, and I really like your point about unintended biases that may be embedded in these data sources, and ways in which you have to be careful also about how to protect the users and the subjects behind these data sources. Now, this is the Launchpad, and so this is about entrepreneurship. So if you're an entrepreneur looking to pilot new data sources and emerging technologies, what are some of the potential starting points? And particularly from your entrepreneurial experience, can you give us some insights on that?
Sure. I mean, the first thing is understanding your clients and what their gaps are. So where I've seen a lot of the attention so far from local companies is in doing data collection, where they'll take a survey that's been provided by an international NGO and they'll go out and actually do the enumeration. And that's obviously very, very popular and can be very beneficial. If you can then add additional value, first of all, help give input into the survey questions that understand that nuance in the community, as well as what could you cross-reference those survey questions with in terms of open data or even closed data sets that you might have access to kind of give a depth to the survey responses that wouldn't be available to the international NGO any other way. Also, you can help negotiate perhaps access to some of those data sets through conversations with local government, local private sector, that again wouldn't be available to an outside firm. And you also can help interpret that data, again, understanding other factors. Oftentimes we find that when we're doing evaluations, we forget about factors like the Ebola crisis or COVID lockdowns. And so some of those things might only be available to you because you're just aware of it and you know the local community, but it's not available to people outside where you live. So again, bringing that added value makes your firm a lot more attractive to providing these evaluation services.
This brings us to the close of this conversation. Thank you so much, Siobhan, for being with us in this Launchpad speaker series. And thank you for your insights. This was great. I hope it's useful for our viewers. For those of you watching us, stay tuned. We have more exciting speakers coming to the Launchpad series, and check out our website for more content. So for now, bye-bye.